Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings, the best sitcom bracket. This is episode 1 of a 4-part series where we go region by region, talk through the matchups. We can pick our brackets, but if you want to vote in the all-time best sitcom bracket, there are a few things you should know. If you hit the description, you can get the Twitter links to each of the matchups. You vote in them, boom, whoever gets the most votes, shockingly enough, will move on in the bracket. You can see the bracket up there as well. Number 2, Sia Nejad from CBS Sports, along with Adam Aizer, who's joining us on the show right now. But Sia is the main one here. He is the one who made this bracket. He made the seedings. I just made a graphic out of it, and we're going to talk about it because I love talking about TV shows. But when you need to get mad over a show that has been underseeded, not included, whatever it is, Sia, where can they find you so they don't come at me?
They can find me at whatever your Twitter description is. But no, you can find me at Sia Nejad if you really want to complain on Twitter. But here's the thing. I'm going to refer throughout this whole series, I'm going to refer to the committee because I want to deflect as best as I possibly can. But yeah, I kind of tried to include, some shows from the 80s, a lot of shows from the 90s, 2000s, and tried to get a nice mix of network shows, mostly some cable shows, but again, if you have any hate mail or any hate tweets at the committee, maybe we'll go with that. Let's do that.
Aizer, do you want to start or do I? Because I want to mean tweet him right now. Where would you like to start with this?
I think he really did a great job. There's no way you're doing this bracket without some controversy, right? You know, you've got to try to set aside your personal feelings. I think. What was the show, Sia, that I said you had too low? Like way too low. Oh, 2.5 Men. Like, 2.5 Men, for a lot of people, 2.5 Men would be a 1 seed. You know, honestly, it's probably for a lot of people their favorite show. What'd you have as a 14 seed? That's something like that. I would have to yell at you at or yell at Pat and tell him to yell at you for that.
That's totally fair. And my excuse there, Adam, if I can respond, Pat, is that, maybe perhaps I'm trying to create some controversy, but then again, 2.5, there's so many good shows here unfortunately 2.5 Men, which is a quality show, I suppose. We'll get there when we get to the Midwest bracket, but it got bumped down by some really good shows. So that's my take there. We'll get into it further when we get there.
You have The Simpsons as a 3 seed.
Ugh, ridiculous.
It's perfectly appropriate.
For what? What? Were you like one of those people whose parents wouldn't let them watch The Simpsons growing up? Was that your thing?
Not only did I watch The Simpsons, I watched The Simpsons when they were rolled out on the Tracy Ullman show with the sketch comedy in the late 80s, going into 1989 when the show actually came out. The reality is, I have my gripes about The Simpsons. We're going to get to that on this very show. I think The Simpsons is good. I think it's very creative, obviously. But with all that said, there's the shows that are ahead of The Simpsons. We can consider The Simpsons the top of the 3 seeds, if you will. So it's not like I don't have them inside, the top 15. I just like the writing and how other shows make me feel versus The Simpsons.
The Simpsons. Yeah, the Simpsons is. I'm gonna try because it's in our brackets and it's in our region. And it's my favorite show, but I'm going to try to be sort of objective about it and use some different criteria other than what's my favorite show. But it's just such a cultural phenomenon. And, I see why it might not be a 1 seed. I'll give you some reasons for that, but I feel bad for the 1 and the 2 seed in this region for getting stuck with the Simpsons as the 3. It would be like putting Alabama as a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. You would just feel bad for the 1 and the 2. Like, man, they got screwed. So that's how I feel for Modern Family and for Fresh Prince to have to go up at some point, whether that's in the Elite and the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 against the Simpsons. That's tough. That's a tough draw.
I don't want to spoil this bracket, but this is coming down to South Park versus the Simpsons in this bracket. They should be the 1 and 2 seeds.
Well, I will say the Modern Family was the 4th of the 1 seeds, so they are appropriately placed in a clearly a strong region.
Let's talk about Modern Family as the 1 seed in this region. Now, if you want to talk about Friends or Seinfeld or Frasier as the other 1 seeds, well, you got to tune into the other shows to figure that one out and see the debate on this. So I get the popularity, and listen, it swept the Emmys. I like Modern Family a lot, but let's not pretend this isn't the stupid person's Arrested Development.
Oh, interesting. I mean, here's the thing. You might be right about that, and I haven't watched the entire Arrested Development series, although I have watched a handful of shows from way back in the day. I think it's just more advanced. I don't know. I mean, I guess Arrested Development broke the fourth wall in the same way that Modern Family did. I like how Modern Family does that. The thing about Modern Family is the characters are so funny. So when we see those interviews, those takeaways, they're funny outside of the fact that the moment of those like interviews is that's funny in its own right, but then the acting on top of that is really funny too. So I think that's where Modern Family kind of raises the bar a little bit.
Yeah, I don't even think
funny
it's not even close. Like Modern Family is the network cable, not trying to be offensive version of what was. I mean, if you just run the first 2 seasons of Arrested Development, it's going to be in like the top 5 shows of all time, Aizer.
Well, I disagree with you. I think Modern Family deserves to be a higher seed than Arrested Development, and that's just goes to if you want to get into the criteria. I think as the three of us are probably around the same age. I'm 38, and Arrested Development was a show that came out in a time where, for me, that's when I was super into TV shows. So I loved that show, and I think it's an amazing show. But one of the criteria I'm going to be using to decide which show is better, just one, is would both me and my parents like it? And I think that the broad appeal of Modern Family is really special. It makes it a legit 1 seed, or maybe a 2 seed if we have some gripes. But I think, I don't think Arrested Development appeals to as many people. And I think Modern Family is honestly just as funny. I love Arrested Development, but Modern Family is amazing. And I could sit down with anyone, with my wife, with my friends, with my parents, people of all different ages, and laugh. We could laugh hysterically for Modern Family. And I don't think Arrested Development has that same appeal. So I'm with you, Sia. I think that's a great 1 seed in Modern Family.
Great 1 seed. So you wouldn't have The Simpsons as the 1 seed here.
So again, I like The Simpsons better. And when we get to that matchup, it will be tough. We'll have to talk it out for all of us. But again, like The Simpsons is great for people our age. I think there's something to be said about a show that everyone could like. When I was growing up, I remember must-see TV on Thursdays. I was like 10, and my entire family, we would watch Friends and Seinfeld and whatever crap, Caroline in the City or whatever, that they stuck in between the 2 shows. But we couldn't do that with The Simpsons. So while I think The Simpsons is probably the best show, I think that's something that we have to consider is like, did it appeal to just the people who liked it growing up, or did it appeal to everyone? And can it still appeal to everyone? And I think Modern Family has that mass appeal that some of the other shows that I absolutely love, that I like better than Modern Family, just don't have. So that's something that we have to. I don't know how I'm gonna pick some of these matchups, but I'd like to talk that out with you because I think we should consider the mass appeal.
I mean, if we consider the mass appeal, we're just watering down the shows that we're picking. I don't understand why we would say something like Modern Family is going to beat out, even just when we throw this on the internet and we get to the bracket in the same like region of 8. It's just the higher part of this bracket. Listen, I love News Radio. News Radio has absolutely no shot of winning here, but Modern Family is likely to lose to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and South Park. Easy.
It shouldn't. It should not lose to It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, I think, is an extremely overrated show. And sorry, Sia, for cutting you off.
No. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, it's kind of a one-note show. And I'm gonna kind of penalize the shows that are a little bit too dirty and I don't think would be funny.
Fuck right off with that. This is not the audience for that.
I'm just saying, I don't think It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia would be funny if it were on ABC. Modern Family had some constraints to deal with here. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia to me is extremely overrated. And so it might lose to them, but that's because the people that are voting in the polls are not going to be, my parents and the mass appeal that Modern Family has. They're not going to be the audience of Modern Family is not going to be accurately represented in those Twitter polls.
So
you're using them.
So the audience of people that can't use the internet are the people that are not going to be involved in this poll?
I'm just saying, yeah, basically. That is only one criteria. This is not going to only be about does it appeal to the masses. That's just one criteria. So I just want to clarify that.
And I agree. Go ahead, Pat.
I was going to say, fortunately, it has one of the easier draws. I'm looking at all the 116 draws. This is by far the easiest 116 draw. Not that the ones are going to lose in the other regions, but they have shows that people like against them, at least. Like, who gives a shit about Blossom?
Yeah, totally fair. I think the committee, may have gotten that one wrong. Like if we're going to go 80s shows, I know we brought up some shows like Charles in Charge before we went live. Like those shows, I think probably could have given, we could have given some deference to. There's a lot of 80s shows that are really not on here. I thought Blossom was kind of iconic and perhaps kind of sticking in my mind a little bit because Blossom is so, I mean, she's hosting Jeopardy. She was on The Big Bang Theory. We've seen so much of Blossom and that all kind of spawned from that show. So I think that's kind of why she made it on this list.
Yeah, she sells essential oils, has her involvement in weirdo medicines that aren't real, then has to backtrack. Oh yeah, great show though. Joey Lawrence, what a heartthrob, right? Is that your angle?
Whoa. Joey Lawrence was a heartthrob, no question about it. There were a lot of male 80s heartthrobs from the 80s show. There's one in a different bracket that we'll end up talking about on a different episode. But yeah, there's a lot of that. Where is Joey these days? I don't know. I feel like he should be doing something.
I mean, they don't have the surreal life anymore, so he's out of options.
That was a great show.
It was.
Great show.
I think you can watch them all on Paramount Plus right now. I think. Because I would go back and watch that. Do you guys have Paramount Plus by chance? Because I do, because I watch The Challenge and all the All-Star seasons are on it. So,
oh, yeah.
But I'm in Canada, so we don't get like the full library because I want to go back and I want to watch the old Real Worlds, the old Road Rules, and I feel like Surreal Life would have to be on there. That or like I Love New York, which I haven't seen in probably like 20 years, which I would definitely watch again. I would do shows recapping I Love New York if I had access to it.
The old VH1 and MTV just lineup of shows of that ilk were truly mesmerizing. I don't know what else to say. And before we go way off topic, let me just say The Challenge, and this isn't what this show is about. The Challenge is the best reality show of all time. Period. End of story.
Best of all time is my favorite of all time. It's the main show of The Challenge is like legit bad though. All the spin-offs are good. The main show sucks.
What about Survivor? I mean, I'm not a reality guy, but Survivor's not the best reality show.
No.
Okay, The Challenge it is. The only one I've watched is basically Vanderpump Rules because my wife likes it, and I got to tell you, that's pretty good. That's pretty good reality TV show right there.
Well,
we could do another bracket for that.
I mean, Aizer, are you watching Vanderpump Rules? You said, or was that you? See, I can't see you.
Yeah. My wife watches it, but I watch it via her. I don't make it a point to watch it. I miss some of it, but yes, it's on and I watch it. This season actually pretty bad. But what's everything that's this season? This season is
stuff
away.
Okay. You clearly haven't been a big
from the season.
No. Hold on a second. You haven't been a big Vanderpump fan for long enough. This is like going back to season 1, 2, and 3, where there's like real drama going on, not this like produced stuff.
No, but that's not on. That's not on this season yet. I mean, what happened off the air or what's going to happen is interesting. The restaurant. I don't give a shit. I'm so glad we can curse. I don't care at all about. They're opening their restaurant. Like it's super boring. I can't wait for watch what happens live after the episode. It's what's happening in real time is much more exciting than what's happening on this season of Vanderpump.
I like that you're not going to go out of your way to watch it, but now you're talking about watch what happens live after the show.
Exactly.
I don't watch. I'm busted.
I know that storyline too. My wife does watch that, and she literally just informed me about the storyline that you all are referring to. And so now she's watching it so intimately and intricately to see, trying to judge reactions and things of that nature, because now she knows what's going on. So I got to say, that is pretty interesting.
So we're going with Modern Family over Blossom. I think that's a pretty good runaway winner for the first part of the South bracket. Let's go to the very bottom of this bracket for a second. Hanging with Mr. Cooper, a 15 seed, taking on Fresh Prince, number 2. I feel like nostalgia is playing with you a little bit here with Fresh Prince. Like, Fresh Prince is great. It's a show that still gets remembered very fondly. I don't know. When you put it up against some of these, like, actually good shows, it's like cookie cutter stuff.
It might be cookie cutter, but I feel like, especially with our age range, our, projected age range, I feel like it was like one of the first shows that we owned that we didn't necessarily like watch with our family growing up. It was like Fresh Prince was like kind of my show. I identified with Will Smith. I thought Uncle Phil maybe to this day, one of the best father figures in all of sort of sitcom lore. So, and then you get Carlton. It was kind of a dynamic show. And for the record, it was kind of slapstick and your typical sitcom stuff. But Will Smith was really good for one, and we hadn't really seen a character like him, or at least not somebody as dynamic as him, at that time. But also, I thought the show tackled some issues. I think there were some issues, especially with the old Aunt Vivian, the real Aunt Vivian. I thought she was so good, and there were so many just different things that were addressed and kind of threaded within the comedy, and it was hilarious. And it's one of those shows, when we go back to Criteria, where it just made me feel good. And I feel like people who watch that show have that sort of general feeling about it. Maybe if they click it on and it's on syndication, maybe they'll leave the channel on there. I mean, maybe not, but I think it's one of those shows where you can make that argument.
This is going to be a good test of
like,
bracket.
Yeah.
Aizer, I think this is going to work out well because both of you kind of seem to have that sentiment coming at this. You want like a feel-good show that's also funny, that's well done, and, gives you the good feelings at the end, where I feel like me and most of my viewers are going to be like, give me the meanest show possible that makes as many people feel as uncomfortable as possible.
Yeah, well, South Park is so much better at that than It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, though. So that's the only, like, I'm with you on South Park. I'm just not an It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia guy, but yeah, I hear you. And Fresh Prince, I think, is slightly overseeded. I think it's a 3 seed. I would have flipped the 2 and the 3. I think I would have put The Simpsons as a 2 and Fresh Prince as a 3. But as I've gotten older and watched more Fresh Prince, I've appreciated it even more. It's funnier than I even realized. And I do agree with you about it was our show and we could watch it without our parents. It was so much better than like Full House and Family Matters. It was so much better than the TGIF shows. It was so much better than Saved by the Bell. It lasts, it holds up. Fresh Prince is a great show that does tackle serious issues where you could see Will Smith growing up, his character growing up from like a kind of a punk kid from Philadelphia to like just like a great dude. I love it. It's a great call. I think it's a 3 seed. It's not going to beat The Simpsons if it gets that far, but it's a terrific show. It deserves to be a top 12 team overall, or show overall.
And it's much better than hanging with Mr. Cooper. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
But I guess, Sia, you kind of hit on it. The Will Smith factor in just the success of this show and then what he would go on to do. If it's not Will Smith as the Fresh Prince, it's anyone else, does the show work?
It works, but it works for 4 seasons, and then we're going to call it a day. So I guess that answer really is saying it's not going to work. Will Smith, all the other actors were great on that show, but Will Smith was clearly the linchpin, and I think we learned who Will Smith was, during that show, and just the idea that he got launched onto also so many blockbuster summer movies. Independence Day, I think it probably started with that, and then it got to Bad Boys and all the other blockbusters. I mean, I think that's really good evidence of how people really adored and loved that show and Will Smith because of it.
The 3 seed at the top of this 8, so Fresh Prince, the 2 at the bottom, the 3 seeds at the top. Simpsons versus Fresh Off the Boat. I don't think this is going to be a fair matchup.
It's not. It's not a fair fight. I mean, I appreciate the fact that Fresh Off the Boat is on this list. I appreciate the fact that the committee
You made the list.
The committee made the list, and the committee is comprised of me. But it's really just semantics here. But I'd prefer to address it as the committee. It is me, but the committee did put Fresh Off the Boat as a 14 seed. Listen, this is a show that I think most people kind of missed. It's not on the air anymore. It was on for 6 seasons. One of the main network channels. It's about an Asian American family who grew up in D.C. and decided to move to Orlando to start a restaurant, and assimilating into that Orlando kind of that cookie cutter Florida life. That's really what the show is about, and it's really clever writing, and it's pretty funny. And honestly, like if you were to just catch some episodes right now, you'd find yourself laughing. It's a really good show, and it actually tackles some of those culture issues, but from an Asian American standpoint. And again, they make it funny, but they kind of address some of the stuff that, maybe an Asian American family would have to deal with in a predominantly white culture.
I think that the criteria for making the bracket in the first place would be that they all have to be funny, and like there's no show that's on here that isn't funny. It's just the varying degrees of how funny that show consistently is going to be.
That's true. This is elite comedy. Like, this is good writing, though. That I'll put it there. It's in a higher echelon than people think.
We're going to talk about The Simpsons.
I'm sorry.
Let's talk about The
Yeah,
Simpsons.
I'm sorry it had to match up with The Simpsons.
That's tough.
The Simpsons, look, you could argue, even if you like South Park better than The Simpsons, if they meet up at some point, you could argue South Park never happens without The Simpsons. Family Guy never happens without The Simpsons. The Simpsons is just amazing. I think the only thing that holds me back a little bit on The Simpsons and why it's an interesting matchup if it does come to South Park versus The Simpsons is, I don't know, after maybe 15 seasons, certainly after 20 seasons, The Simpsons is absolutely terrible now. South Park is still good. Right, The Simpsons, probably after season 11 or 12, I don't really want to watch it anymore. Yeah, 12, 13, 14, 15, they're fine. But even after season 8, you're talking about seasons 3 through 8 for The Simpsons, where it's no, I would say 3 through 7, where it's absolutely elite, best show I've ever seen. It's maybe a short prime. I don't know, probably not. But it's so bad and it's gone on for so long that I don't know if that hurts its candidacy at all. But I'm just nitpicking. Also, I think the first note in the opening credits is a little bit too loud. When I watch it, I'm like, man, I need to turn that down. So they could probably mix the volume a little bit better. But those are the only complaints I have about The Simpsons. It's got so much heart. It's so funny. It's so quotable. And then later, I guess we'll talk about what I think is going to, let's say it's Modern Family versus The Simpsons. If you just took two people who had never seen or heard of those two shows, sat them down in a room and showed them the best episodes of those two shows, which ones would they like better? I think it might be Modern Family. Simpsons might be a little bit niche in that regard. But it's my favorite show, so I'm nitpicking here. It's the GOAT.
I really feel like this whole discussion is you think people are too stupid to like The Simpsons.
No, I just think that the Simpsons, man, did you watch The State growing up?
The State?
On MTV?
No.
So the State was all the people from Reno 911 when they were like 20, basically. And they had their sketch comedy show, and I loved that show. And then they went on to Reno 911, and they went on to Wet Hot American Summer, which is amazing if you guys have seen that movie. And I find that stuff so funny. And it has nothing to do with me being smart and other people being stupid. It's just that some people don't find that stuff funny. They don't find that brand of humor funny. Simpsons is like that, only much, much more popular. But I do think there are some people that just would not be into The Simpsons. It's just, they wouldn't be into that humor. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not a smart versus stupid thing. It's just, it's a little tiny bit niche. Whereas, some of the one seeds are not. Like, I think Seinfeld has a broader humor base, if that makes sense, than The Simpsons. But again, you're trying to get, I don't know what else to say about The Simpsons. It is amazing, but if there are any knocks, it's that, like, again, would my parents like it? No, they would not. Does that matter? To me, it does a little bit.
I mean, I would say that my parents were the ones who watched The Simpsons with me when I was growing up. So
they're cool. They're cooler than my parents. I don't know. You win.
Can I ask a question when it comes to some of the animated stuff that is on in this bracket? And this is a legitimate question, and I'm not sure I know I think I know the answer to this, but when you guys address The Simpsons as smart, is The Simpsons a smarter show or is Family Guy a smarter show?
The Family Guy is like a stupid show.
The Simpsons. The Family Guy is actually, I think, became one of the worst shows. Like what I said about The Simpsons in season 20 happened to Family Guy in like season 6, basically. It became the same old recycled jokes. It's too offensive for me to say what the recycled jokes were, but they were, not that I was offended by them, but they were these dumb, supposed to be edgy, offensive jokes. They were just lame. They relied on the same types of voices in every show. It didn't work. You never see the episode where Brian and Stewie are locked in a bank vault?
No.
Yes.
That is the worst episode I've ever seen of a TV show ever. I think it is disgusting, and it is jumping the shark in such a major way. I don't think Family Guy used to be smart. I hate Family. I'm sorry. I hate Family Guy. I used to love it. It is tarnished by some of the crap it put out in the last several. No, I mean in most of the tenure of Family Guy.
It's funny because Family Guy just goes for all the low-hanging fruit when it comes to jokes. The Seth MacFarlane show now, or I mean, since they've both been on for like the past 20 years, American Dad is where the smart writing went and left Family Guy in the dust.
Yeah, that's probably true. I do think there's some smart to Family Guy, but I think you're probably right. Simpsons is technically the smarter.
No, there is a lot of smart to Family Guy when it was great, but it just never evolved. And I think Simpsons, it does have some heart in it, and you do care about the characters. Like Family Guy, they just crapped on Meg the entire series, and Stewie or Peter, what's his name, Chris never became anything. They're just the same characters. Like Simpsons, I think, does a really good job of having some sentimentality in it, whereas and even South Park does too, I think. But Family Guy, basically none.
So real quick reaction there. I don't want my sitcom to evolve because I buy into the sitcom, and usually you have like your classic like evolution, which like Big Bang Theory, for example, they introduced a lot more characters. By season 5, 6, and 7, it became less about Sheldon and some of the main characters. I thought that's when the show got worse. So I mean, I kind of want, as part of my criteria, as a show that kind of sticks with what works.
But didn't Fresh Prince evolve while also sticking to what worked?
Yeah, that's a good point. It did.
Did
it need to was the question. I'm not sure if it needed to.
Didn't
right.
Modern Family do exactly the same thing?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I love the character. I love the characters on Modern Family. I think it evolved beautifully.
I think the evolution in a real sitcom with real people versus an animated one, I think that's different. Like I don't want my animated sitcom comedy to evolve. I don't need that.
Okay.
Well, I maybe evolve wasn't the right word. I think Family Guy was the same show over and over and over again. And eventually they ran out of funny jokes.
This is an interesting matchup. The 4 versus 13 in this bracket. News Radio is a 4 seed. Perfect Strangers is a 13 seed. Now, I think most people will tell you, Sia, that News Radio is overseeded. I am not one of those people, but we can't pretend like News Radio was some sort of culture hit. Like most people just didn't watch News Radio.
No, you're absolutely right about that. And this is, I think, the committee making a statement that perhaps they should have. And perhaps they can go back and watch the show, and the writing is so good and the comedy is so good that it withstands the test of time. So you're right, it's overseeded. This is a very shocking number that the committee chose here. But again, there's so many good characters and there's such good writing in this show. Dave Foley, Pat, I'm sure you're familiar with him. Adam, I'm not sure about you from Kids in the Hall. Andy Dick was in this. Joe Rogan, of course, Phil Hartman. It was every time I watched the show, I was like, and this is so few and far between. I was so excited to watch the show. I was like legitimately excited that it was on because the writing and the comedy was just so clever and interesting to me. And then, of course, most of you know Phil Hartman died in the late 90s, and the show kind of went downhill. I think John Lovitz took over for him, but I think it's a great show. Yes, it is probably overseeded, but I think people should watch it.
I think it will do okay against Perfect Strangers, though. Does anyone have any Perfect Strangers hot takes? Are you a big Belky head, Aizer?
I think I was when I was really young, but no, I don't have any hot takes. I actually had not seen News Radio until this morning, and I watched an episode. Yeah, I watched it. I probably saw it, but I never really watched it. I don't remember it, I saw season 2, episode 12, and I thought it was a little bit lame. I thought it was funny, but it was a little, like one-liner. Oh, I can tell where they're going with this joke. So I didn't think it was all that edgy, put it that way, but I laughed. I laughed more than I thought I would. It was better than I thought. It's going to get crushed by South Park, but that's fine.
Well, I mean, mostly everything is going to get crushed by South Park. I'm just shocked it hasn't had more of a life, Sia, because Joe Rogan's on it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think we kind of forgot that Joe Rogan was an actor in the first place. And he's pretty good in that show. I mean, he's not like he is kind of a main character, but he's not one of the reasons I watch the show. He's just a nice supplement to the show. I'll tell you the reason it's probably overseeded is because Phil Hartman was so good. His character is good, but he's also just a really funny guy. I think he's one of the best Saturday Night Live characters of all time. And I think that just almost in the same way Fresh Prince, not the same way, but a similar way that Fresh Prince drove that show. Phil Hartman is excellent in that show. And Stephen Root as well, the guy from Office Space, Milton. He's excellent in that show as well.
He was great. I was blown away by the cast. I was like, damn, every actor is great in this show.
Mm-hmm.
South Park is the 5 seed. Doogie Howser is the 12 seed. So sorry, Doogie. I don't think you're going to have much of a fight here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Doogie Howser, that's one of those, throwbacks to the 80s that I thought it was at least an interesting show. You've got the kid doctor thing, which isn't altogether interesting. I like how at the end of the show, they kind of, there's one of those lessons. He's typing on his like little computer screen from like his Commodore 64 or whatever it is. I just think it was an interesting show to have on here. It's probably too high as a 12 seed, but it's going to get absolutely murdered by South Park anyway.
Well,
I'm glad it got thrown. The Wolves. I'm glad that got South Park and not something good.
The South Park discussion is really interesting because I like what you pointed out of does the longevity mean something? Because it's one of the few shows ever that the longer you go in time, Aizer, that South Park actually kind of seems to get better.
I think so. I mean, I can't say I watch it as much as I did 15 years ago, but I'm blown away by how good it still is. I think it's less consistently good, but it is a case to be the number, to win the whole thing, right? I mean, if you compare South Park to Seinfeld, Seinfeld was, how many seasons was Seinfeld?
8.
9-ish? I don't even know.
8, 9?
I mean, what are we on? 30 here? Close to 30 with South Park? And they've had, movies and specials and all that. It's a really strong case to make that they are just crushing it, while The Simpsons is just, I will not even watch The Simpsons now. And it's been that way for over a decade. So I think that's something that we'll have to talk out, because, in its prime, I don't know that it's as good as some of the other shows in this bracket, but you could argue that it is. But that's a show that's really evolved from being just like poop jokes all the time and, oh my God, they killed Kenny. Remember how funny, oh my God, they killed Kenny was? That's not funny anymore, but they found other ways. They made Randy Marsh is almost like the main character, and he's so funny. So they've adapted, and they're extremely political and satirical. A lot going for South Park.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it's a 5 seed. It's probably a little too low. The thing about South Park when it started, I thought it was just like kind of crass humor, and I just didn't see much in it. That was a time where I was watching Family Guy. That was the only animated show I was watching. I wasn't watching Simpsons anymore. And I just thought South Park was kind of like the stepchild of Family Guy. And to your point, Pat, I think it has probably withstood the test of time a little bit more than the other two shows have. And the way they've kind of gotten away with, making those political statements and staying popular and staying super edgy and staying popular, I think you can clearly get away with that a little bit more when you're a cartoon as opposed to like a real series with real people. But I got to hand it to South Park, because at first I just wasn't impressed with them. But I do think I think it's a great show. It's not one of my favorite shows, but it definitely belongs probably advancing maybe a couple rounds, if not more.
No, it probably gets itself out of this region of the bracket. I'm going to have it moving on here. And I'm guessing the voters are going to do that as well. The 6 seed matchup that we have, this was one of the most criminally underseeded shows in this entire thing. And if it wasn't going up against The Simpsons in the next round, could make a run here. But for everything that you said about Modern Family off the top, we have Married with Children at number 6. Married with Children is fine. Roseanne as an 11 seed. I think you forget how popular Roseanne was.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I mean, I don't think popularity is going to be the primary criteria here, though. I mean, if popularity is the primary criteria, then 2.5 Men would also enjoy, a top 3 seed as well. So what's funny, though, is I thought you were going the other way. I legitimately thought you were about to say that Married with Children is drastically underseeded. I mean, yeah, Roseanne at 11, that's probably a little low. But I think Married with Children has a similar cult following. Maybe not from the same people, but really may be from the same people, because both shows seem to represent sort of working class America to a large degree. And again, I thought both shows were really funny. Obviously, Roseanne did a little bit more with their writing, with their content, but I think you're going to see with the voting that Married with Children is super popular. It wouldn't shock me at all if it beats Roseanne.
It would shock me if it beat Roseanne. It'd be legitimately fun.
Oh, I think it'll be Roseanne. But I think you're right. This is the toughest of the first round matchups. And I looked at the entire field of 64. It's one of the toughest of all the first round matchups. This might be like a where are you from kind of thing, but I don't know. I don't want to say political. I know the second sequence of Roseanne that was more of a political thing, but it might just be about like what type of humor appealed to you. But these two shows were heavyweights in their times. I did not like Roseanne. This is an easy Married with Children vote for me, but I think it's going to be pretty close. I think Married with Children is going to win, but this is a really good matchup here. This would be like the Friday night 7:40 p.m. CBS game for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's very good. It's like you said, it probably is the best matchup of the bunch. I can't see one that is probably going to be as close. Actually, you know what? The 8 and 9 seed, I personally think are close, and it's Spin City versus Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Now, It's Always Sunny is going to run away with this. I like Spin City better. And both
Interesting.
versions of Spin City. I like the Michael J. Fox part and the Charlie Sheen version better than It's Sunny in Philadelphia.
So you know what's funny, Pat, is when the committee was putting their seating together and the just the shows together, I actually initially confused Spin City
And
with
Just Shoot Me?
Just Shoot Me. Yes. How did you know that?
Because they were always on at the same time. Even in reruns.
Oh, that's incredible.
In syndication, they would come on one after the other.
I cannot believe you just guessed that. But like just to finish the thought, I had actually meant to put in Just Shoot Me there with David Spade. But then obviously Spin City, I think is somewhat deserving there. I mean, I didn't watch a ton of that show. We know that Michael J. Fox was the star of that show. You mentioned Charlie Sheen came in because after Michael J. Fox announced that he had Parkinson's, he ended up leaving the show. But yeah, good show. I mean, I think you're right. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is going to absolutely run away with this one.
Yeah, and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, even though I think it's overrated and I don't love it, it would get my vote because it does have some moments where I'm like choking from laughing so hard. You know, it does have some incredible moments that maybe existed on Spin City, but I seriously doubt it. But they did some really, really funny things on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And I look, if so many people like it, I can't knock it too much. I'm fine with Modern Family beating it in the next round, but I'm going to give it some credit here and put it past Spin City.
Well, I think this is a very just your type of humor-based type selection. I think these are two completely different shows, and it's the first Bill Lawrence show. So if you like Scrubs and then you went on to like Cougar Town after that, chances are you're going to love Spin City because it has, I mean, Scrubs is the best of those three shows, but Spin City is a lot closer to Scrubs than it is the other way.
Yeah, and in Scrubs, when we get to the West bracket, I think I'm very curious to see the type of damage that does. But I think you're right. I actually didn't make the Bill Lawrence connection there. Cougar Town was actually kind of funny too. Maybe that belonged in this field of 64. But yeah, that type of writing is very funny to me. And so listen, if it's my vote, I might even put Spin City over It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I just know it's not going to win.
Yeah, I'm going to vote for it. In my bracket, Spin City is moving on, but I'm going to get that one wrong once it comes down to the voting. Once again, hit the description of the pod or the video, or just go to Twitter at the PME, and you can find all of the matchups that you get to vote in. I did skip over one here, and it's probably one that I should bring up because I think there's a lot in common with number 7, Schitt's Creek. It's taking on a different world. Those couldn't be, I mean, we talk about a different world in terms of shows. Those are two completely different ones. But we're going to get into a thing with the Friends and with Friends in The Office when we do some of the other regions. But I think that Schitt's Creek has the potential to fall into one of those buckets. It's a show that was, I mean, The Office was relatively popular. It was on, became incredibly popular in the first run of Netflix when that was just there. Friends was obviously like the biggest show on TV, but then it had that streaming run, which also continued to make it so much popular with, you know, people 20 years younger than were actually watching it at the time. I frankly don't find Friends all that funny. I don't understand why people prefer it to Seinfeld now. It makes no sense to me. But Schitt's Creek is now in this mix too, where no one watched it, but then it got onto streaming, and then all of a sudden it started winning Emmys. It's a hilarious show, but now everyone has kind of watched it. It was basically the pandemic show. That and Ozark were the two that everyone just decided to binge at the beginning. And I guess Tiger King was the other one, but that was only 8 episodes. So I think that Schitt's Creek has a chance here to go on a bit of a run. I am curious what happens in the next round, Aizer, when it's Schitt's Creek versus Fresh Prince.
Oh, Fresh Prince slaughter Schitt's Creek to me. I like Schitt's Creek. I found Schitt's Creek to be
funnier than
overrated,
Fresh Prince because it is.
So funnier, but that's the thing, is it's funnier, but it's not better. And it's funnier because it's so much later. You know, I find it hard that for any show that came out in the early to mid 90s to be as funny as the shows that came out 15 years later, for the most part, except for the true elites. But I think Schitt's Creek had a lot of episodes that I was just like, that wasn't really that good. I don't know if you guys felt that way, but Schitt's Creek was great and I really liked it, but I felt like there were a lot of misses in that show. It was almost like sketch comedy. Sometimes, you know, some sketch comedy is incredible. Sometimes it just totally whiffs. That's how I felt about Schitt's Creek. It was really good, but the funny thing is in this matchup with A Different World, that was another show that I hadn't seen until this morning. And I tried to watch a little bit, and my wife said she watched it and she really liked it. And it's actually pretty good. So it's actually a show that I hope I can watch a little more. I have to put Schitt's Creek ahead because I just don't know A Different World, but I think it's overrated and it gets smashed, in my opinion, by Fresh Prince.
So the only reason it doesn't get smashed by Fresh Prince, if that happens, is because of recency bias, in my opinion. And by the way, that's not the only reason, but I think Schitt's Creek is overrated too. And it's one of those things where when the show was on, I wasn't really watching it, but at a certain point, I'm like, man, everybody is talking about this. And we get that with social media. Once everybody decides they like a show, I mean, a lot of times you're just going to get that snowball effect. So I'm like, all right, let me judge this for myself. And it wasn't like I watched 1 or 2 episodes and then called it a day. I literally watched like 7 or 8 episodes, and there are some funny characters and some funny things that happen in that show. But I found myself searching for the comedy as opposed to like letting the comedy come to me. I don't like that. I really felt like it benefited off the pandemic in terms of, hey, this is the comedy that you can binge. This is the comedy that's out. It's apparently the hot new thing. I think it's really overrated. Honestly, for my vote, it's going to be A Different World. I thought Different World was a great spinoff from The Cosby Show. And I think Schitt's Creek is overrated. I think if Schitt's Creek advances, which it probably will, and if it actually beats Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I think it's a grave error by the voters.
Yeah.
See, I see a big bias on this list. I'm Canadian. It's a Canadian show. It just features a ton of Canadian humor and the style of comedy that we enjoy. Just like I know there's like 0 British shows on this. Like you have The Office as a 1 seed, yet the potentially superior British Office isn't listed.
Yeah. That's fair. I've never seen that show, and you're probably right. It may or may not be superior. Would it have been weird to put 2 offices on the bracket?
Yes.
I don't think so.
It's
at
not
all.
superior.
I mean, it is.
Michael Scott is better.
Oh, I mean, it depends. I mean, how mean do you want your comedy?
Can I just ask you a question about Schitt's Creek? We are allowed to spoil things, right?
Yeah, sure.
Did it bother you that Alexis did not end up with Ted?
No, I don't care. I'm binging the show for laughs. It's like you said, it's hard for older comedies to keep up with what we have going on now. But you hit on the prime time of comedy. Season 3 to season 8 of The Simpsons is the best run any show is probably ever going to have, and it holds up to 30 years later when we're looking at it. And you talked about the influences that it could have on things like South Park, on Futurama, which isn't on here, which is a travesty, King of the Hill, and things like that. But The Simpsons also very much influenced Arrested Development, 30 Rock, and Schitt's Creek with its pace of jokes and just not stopping for anything. That is the important part about the show. It really has nothing to do with the characters. It's the rapidity of jokes and how fast they can come one after another. The jokes per second on these shows are so high, and that's what all these shows took from The Simpsons.
I didn't feel that way about Schitt's Creek, though. I kind of feel like I felt it was kind of slow, and I almost felt like I was forcing myself to laugh to justify continuing to watch it. And I, at some point, got a little bored with Schitt's Creek. Sia, it seems like you and I should watch TV together. We have very similar opinions. I'm liking this.
Yeah,
except for your hatred of the Family Guy. Yeah, let me just point out, I think season 1 of the Family Guy is one of the best seasons of any show. I think it is unbelievably funny and clever.
Season one of Family Guy. I would agree with you, but there's a reason that show got canceled and no one watched it, and it had to evolve into what it became.
That's partially true, actually, but it was up against Seinfeld back then, for one, and for two, I think it kind of passed over the controversial line one too many times, even in that first season, and I think some of the executives over at Fox were not super happy about that.
Interesting. Okay, so let's fill out our brackets here. So the final 4 of this side of the bracket, Aizer, you're the guest here, so you can go. Who do you have as the final 4 of this bracket?
All right, so that's Modern Family, South Park, The Simpsons. So 1, 2, 3, 5. Modern Family, South Park, Simpsons, and Fresh Prince.
Okay, I'm gonna go Spin City and South Park at the top. So I'm going to go with a 9 seed taking on a 5 seed, and then The Simpsons and Schitt's Creek. So I'm going to go with a 3 and a 7. Sia, what do you got?
Okay, so I'm going to go Modern Family. I'm going to go News Radio. And then I'm doing Fresh Prince at the bottom, but who meets Fresh Prince? It's going to be The Simpsons.
So what would be the final?
News Radio over South Park.
So you're going to go Simpsons versus News Radio as the championship of this bracket, or versus Modern Family?
Versus Modern Family.
All right, I'm going to have South Park versus The Simpsons as my final, Aizer.
I don't know how to do Modern. Like, I'm definitely going to have Simpsons over Fresh Prince. South Park versus Modern Family. I'm going to go with South Park. I'm going to go Simpsons versus South Park.
Simpsons wins.
And you know, You know what's funny here? If The Simpsons went up against Modern Family, I might pick Modern Family.
Why?
Because of all the things I said. Because of all the things I said earlier, the sort of mass appeal, and I think Modern Family is freaking hilarious. It is an incredible show. But Simpsons versus South Park is an easier set, like Simpsons for me, because they're both cartoons and like Simpsons is just better and set the tone for South Park, I think. So all right, I'll advance. I almost didn't want to advance the Simpsons. I felt like I was being too biased, but Simpsons wins the bracket over South Park. So there we go. They're in the final four.
I mean, that's my final as well. I got Simpsons topping South Park ever so slightly, Sia, to win the South region.
Yeah, and I want to change my mind. I want to have in the final two of this region. It's Modern Family versus Fresh Prince for me. It's the 1 and the 2 seed. It's not the Simpsons.
Well, it should be, because you made the seed, so that wouldn't make any sense if it wasn't the 1 and the 2.
You're probably right. I'm free to change my mind based on your analysis.
Justify Fresh Prince over the Simpsons.
Simpsons is clearly more clever, and the writing is probably better. But if we're talking about criteria for a show, and this is a bias, but I think it should be a bias for everybody, I'm going to identify with characters way easier when they're not animated. And so, like when it comes to the Fresh Prince, like even Carlton in some ways, I just identify with those characters a little bit better. And in terms of rewatchability, this is going to sound strange to you because I know how much of a Simpsons fan you both are. But if a Simpsons show is on and I just click the channel and boom, the Simpsons is on, I'm just telling you, I'm going to change the channel again. But if the Fresh Prince is on, I know that I'm at least going to watch for a couple minutes because of how it makes me feel. I get a certain comfort level with the comedy that I absolutely love about the show and the characters, whether it's Carlton or Hillary or Will or Uncle Phil. There's a certain comfort level and comedy that I get with that show that I just don't get from any animated cartoon.
Okay, so it sounds like you hate animation. That is the first thing that I've
I love the
taken away
Family
from
Guy.
this. It's just Family Guy. It's not the Family Guy. Just Family Guy.
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
And
I love
additionally,
Family Guy.
what you say about trying to click on a channel and you see The Simpsons on and you click off, but if you clicked on a channel and saw the Fresh Prince on there, then you would stay. Problem is, channels don't show Fresh Prince. They show The Simpsons.
Fair. Completely fair. And that's why The Simpsons is probably going to roll the Fresh Prince. But in terms of what the committee believed, it was that Fresh Prince edged out The Simpsons. But I understand how most people would disagree with that.
The committee, I love it. So The Simpsons is actually my going to bed show because it does give me that nice warm feeling. And I think if you turn on a channel and The Simpsons were on it, were season 15, 18, whatever, then okay, I understand turning it off. If it were seasons 3 through 8, do not change that dial. And I think I was watching a documentary, kind of like it wasn't quite a documentary. It was like a feature on The Simpsons. And they pointed out that Lisa is arguably the most important character in the show because she brings a little bit of heart to it. She brings this moral compass. And Marge as well. And that gives it something that South Park doesn't have. And I think that gives it something that Family Guy definitely doesn't have. It's not just a laugh. It is joke after joke after joke, but it's not all it is. The Simpsons does do a really nice job of having some heart and some compassion in there to make you like the characters even more, even though they are animated. So that pushes it over the edge for me, and should have been the 2 seed in this bracket, if not the 1.
Okay, well, we've gone through the bracket. Simpsons wins. It's good to know. Maybe South Park will end up winning. Maybe It's Sunny in Philadelphia will end up winning this region after we end up concluding the voting. But Aizer, before you get out of here, you're not going to be on the shows for the other regions. But to look at the other regions, I feel pretty comfortable in saying that although I love Frasier as a 1 seed, that it's not going to win its region.
No, it's not. It's not a 1 seed. It's ridiculous. I mean, Cheers is a better show.
I mean, yeah.
Cheers is a better show.
I prefer Frasier, but that's me.
By the way, Brooklyn Nine-Nine should beat How I Met Your Mother. It's better than How I Met Your Mother.
Agreed.
Sia
asked me 3 separate times because he kept forgetting shows, putting ones on, whatever it was, and each time he said, "Take out Brooklyn Nine-Nine from the bracket." And I was like, "No, it's gonna win."
It's so funny, man. It's so good. I think you really did a great job. I just think that maybe next time we do this same bracket, but we do theme songs, because then Blossom is going to beat Modern Family, and we're going to things are going to get totally upended.
You would also get Charles in Charge in there as well.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
There's
for
so
sure. But
many good ones.
Growing Pains would win the championship in the theme song battle.
Different Strokes, Facts of Life, that would be in the bracket. Married with
Yeah.
Children has a nice theme song, Love and Marriage. There's a lot going on there. That's a good one.
It's funny, like you have like the catchy like late 80s tunes with a lot I mean people would love the Friends one too, although that's an abomination of a song. Isn't the best theme to any comedy the Curb theme?
No. I see your point.
You hear it and you know.
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, I see your
Yeah.
point, but I don't think it would win. But it would be. It's a good dark horse because the simplicity of it is pretty cool. Saved by the Bell, by the way, would also be a real contender.
People are going to be so mad at me when they see the Curb seating in the Midwest. So mad.
Oh, where is it?
I'm scared.
He has it as a 5 seed.
A 5. I agree. That's another show.
Oh my god.
It misses a lot. It's like The Simpsons never had a bad episode, basically, from those 3 through 8. It pretty much never had a bad episode. I do not feel that way about Curb. Curb had maybe 30%. I was like, I did not find that funny. Schitt's Creek, maybe closer to 40%. So the true elite shows, they just didn't take a week off. And that's what pushes The Simpsons ahead.
Well,
for me,
when
5-6 years of just awesome.
When we do the Midwest, we're eventually gonna have Curb run into Friends because of the seating, and it's gonna be hilarious. I mean, you talk about shows like, yeah, well, let's say, I mean, your words, not mine. Curb misses 30% of the time, but what if it's like Friends and the show's just not that funny?
All right, so can I give you a theory on Friends? Because I watch Friends every day when I'm down here in my office studio, whatever, just a room with a microphone. And then after that, I go upstairs. I'll make some lunch. I'll always put on TBS and I'll put on Friends because that show makes me feel better than any show. And I think Friends is a live action cartoon. If you look at Friends, the sets, the clothing, everything is super bright. All very colorful. It subliminally is making you love watching it. And every person on the show is good looking. And it compensates, I think, for some not funniness, but I think it is pretty funny. But Friends is the most visually appealing, not just the people on the show, but the sets, everything. Whereas Seinfeld, I feel like every episode is like a dreary winter day in an ugly apartment in New York City. Friends is the most visually appealing show. I think that is the hidden secret behind why everybody loves Friends.
Interesting. Do you have a reason for it,
Yeah.
Sia?
Why they like it? I mean, that's a really interesting reason. I mean, I don't know. I think the dynamic, sometimes it just comes down to acting and writing. And I'm not saying it's like really advanced writing, but the way the characters kind of interact with each other, it just makes it. And the comedy is pretty good when you look at the comedy versus how the characters are interacting. I think it's one of those shows that very rarely misses. To Adam's point, it's not one of my favorite shows, and I do feel like it does sort of promote a good mood, a good feeling, where a lot of sitcoms, they're not really going for that. I think Friends was legitimately going for that as they were threading in the comedy and the storylines, and it worked out for them.
See, everything you're saying about Friends, I would say Parks and Rec does way better.
Well, the comedy's better on Parks and Rec. That's true.
And I think it makes you feel better. That is one of the few good feeling sitcoms.
So
I don't think anything makes you feel better than Friends. And that is the secret to Friends. They all get along all the time. And when they get into a fight, like it's other than Ross and Rachel, they have the drama, but that is the beauty of it. It's just like, you can't help but love these people, because it's not the funniest show, but it is one of the best shows. And it will be very interesting how people vote on that. But there's no show, I think, that makes people feel better than Friends. It is genius in that regard.
Well, the one thing about Friends, too, is it enjoyed sort of the last years, the last decade of true network TV where the cable proliferation and the show proliferation hadn't really happened yet. And Parks and Rec, if you would swap those two shows and you put Parks and Rec in the time frame that Friends was in, and you put Friends where Parks and Rec is, then I think they would have basically opposite popularity. I think Parks and Rec would enjoy that sort of time frame that Friends was able to put itself in. And same with Seinfeld. These shows wouldn't really be as popular today, not just because the comedy is different, but because we have so much more to watch. So Friends gets the benefit of that, and that's something we probably should realize.
I mean, Seinfeld today is just Curb. That's essentially what it would be.
Mm-hmm. True.
So we do have an idea of what Seinfeld would look like in today's day and age. I think there's a lot of people that would say that Curb they find funnier than Seinfeld.
So how do you guys deal with the matter of cursing? Because I think it's harder to be funny on network television than it is on true network, on like, the four main networks or whatever, than it is on Comedy Central or on HBO. And I wonder if that factors in, because like Curb maybe has funnier moments, but Curb also crosses lines that Seinfeld never could have. So I wonder how that factors in for you guys.
I mean, it doesn't. We're not grading on a curve here. We're putting 1v1.
It does for me.
Why though? That's not fair.
No, because I think I think that you have to appreciate Simpsons versus South Park, for example. South Park, I think the fact that they're equally funny, I give the credit to the Simpsons, because the Simpsons couldn't do 90% of the jokes that are on South Park. Like if South Park had been on Fox instead of Comedy Central, would it have been funny? I don't know. If Simpsons had been on Comedy Central instead of Fox, it would probably have been even funnier. Does that argument not make sense?
I think you can break ties with that.
You could break ties with it, but you also have to remember that the shows were created in a certain format. So if the show was on a different network where you could do different things, they would cease being that show.
Yeah.
And it might be better, it might be worse.
Well, what is it? I'm sticking to it. I don't remember who says that. It's from a TV show.
And listen,
that's from Weekend Update. That's something. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And Aizer, listen, if swearing made people download shows and watch shows, then my show would be far more popular than your show, and that's just not the case.
If I could curse on my show, though, it might make it 10 times better. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'd like to try that.
I don't know, but you would have to then put in that explicit tag like I do, and you wouldn't pop up in all the searches. Sometimes them's the breaks when you fucking want to say what you want, and that's just the way that it's going to go. Anyway, thank you so much for coming on. This is the first of 4 parts. If people do not know you, Adam Aizer, can you please tell them where they can find you?
Yeah, well, it's spelled Aizer, so you can find me on Twitter at Adam Aizer. I host the Fantasy Football Today podcast, so you can search for Fantasy Football Today. And thank you very much, Pat. I can't believe it's been this long. With the first time we're ever working together. This has been really fun. I've always admired everything you've done. You are awesome. And Sia, thank you for doing this bracket and inviting me on the show. I had a blast, and it's always nice to talk about things that aren't fantasy football. It's also nice to talk about fantasy football. So thank you very much for having me.
Sia, we got Adam out of the way early because he's your friend and he won't be so mean to you. You just wait for the rest of these shows.
Oh, I'm actually ready. I'm ready. I know I'm going to get some pushback here, and I'm going to have to arm myself with the right retort. So wait and see.
So Sia and I will be back with other guests that you probably know coming up to do the other 3 regions of the bracket. Once again, you can vote down in the description. You can follow Sia on Twitter at Sia Nejad. So SIA. I don't think you need the capital N, but you can put that in out of respect if you want to. NEJAD on Twitter. And you just click it down in the description and get yourself over there very easily as well. And if you like golf, you're going to like Sia. You like football, you're going to like Sia. So go check out all of his work as well. And thank you again, Sia, for putting all this together, because I most definitely did not want to do it. And that becomes the breaks when you're the guy who wants to do all the hard work that everyone's going to hate you for it. Trust me, I know that. That's why I don't do it anymore. But I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Mayo experience! Experience!